For weeks, Republicans and Democrats have been fighting over about $60 billion. The Republicans want to cut $61 billion, which may sound like a lot, except it's less than a third of what the U.S. will spend this year just on interest on the debt. And that's about an eighth of this year's budget deficit. And it's just a tiny percentage of this year's federal spending. A $61 billion cut doesn't seem very deep now. Still, that $60 billion has been what some Democrats say would be cruel to cut. They say that even though the current budget is unsustainable, obviously unsustainable, it puts us on the road to bankruptcy. So I was happy this week when finally we got a serious plan from Congressman Paul Ryan to take America off the road to bankruptcy. The head in the sand crowd is even more horrified about that. A Washington Post columnist called Ryan's plan radical, irresponsible, extreme. So here's one of the extremists, the vice chairman of the Budget Committee, Scott Garrett. You worked with Congressman Ryan on this. And
right.
Are you an extremist who's going to hurt people?
I certainly have no intention of hurting anyone, absolutely not. And just the opposite. We want to be able to make sure that the programs that people rely on today will actually be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day, so that our kids and our children's children will be able to say, well, there was a program there before, how come this generation never took care of it to make sure that it was there in the future? We want to take care of our future generations as well.
All right, the roadmap does lay out $6.2 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years. Well, cuts compared to what Obama would have spent. But spending would still increase by about $1 trillion over the next 10 years.
Yeah, and you raise an interesting point. On any discussion you have with anybody about budgets, you have to ask, what are you comparing it to? And I would say the fairest thing to compare it to is, what are we spending today? So you should always compare it to, what are we doing in the 2011 budget, although we really don't have a budget this year, but what do we do compared to now? And so President Obama, what would he do? He would, under his budget, he would raise spending about 2 or 3%, $90 billion. Paul Ryan, you mentioned him, he would cut spending by around 3%, that's about $85, $89 billion the first year. And the RSC, which we're going to talk about in a minute, we would actually cut spending by $300 billion.
Well, let's talk about that. You're the chairman of the R&C, the Republican Study Committee, and today...
their budget task force, yeah.
Today, your group proposed a budget with more cuts, and your plan would end the deficits in 8 years.
Right.
Paul Ryan's plan was going to go, 2050, 2080, depending who you're talking to. So what do you cut that he doesn't?
So we take a lot from Paul's plan that he did just the other night, and then we go on more from it. We take additional savings, cuts in the entitlements, which he does not do. So
you raise the retirement age.
Yeah, and this is something we do. And this is something when I go home to people and I say, if you're on Social Security now, or you're about to be on Social Security, 60 or older, is it okay? Would you be satisfied we leave it for you? But people slightly younger than that, do you have any problem of saying they have to work a month or two longer before you get Social Security or before you get Medicare? And by and large, when they realize how dire our fiscal straits are, as you educate them on, then they realize a month or two more working, if it makes the system sustainable, is not a bad thing.
So you only raise it to 67. We're living to 80 now. How does that make it sustainable?
Well, right. So depending on your age, you go up to either 67 or eventually up to 70. Depending on if you're younger, born in 1974, it makes it sustainable. You save literally billions of dollars doing that, and those billions of dollars is what you need in order to get that growth curve and that going in the right direction in order to balance in 8 or 9 years. 8 years. You're
going to reduce the federal workforce by 15%. Ryan just was 10%.
Right.
You're going to fire people?
Well, again, I guess if the Senate Democrat leadership has a way and we shut down the government, we'll see just how many government workers are actually essential after all. But I think we've grown a country so large in the workforce that we can cut that down. And that's why overall spending, as I say, we cut spending first year around 9%, 15% of the workforce. I think we can live with that.
You'll sell 5% of government lands.
Sure. And what we're doing there also is to make sure that these lands are put to their best use. We have mineral deposits, we have oil deposits, we have other more beneficial use than the American public have those assets tied up right now and not being used to any benefit. So let's sell that and put that to try and balance the budget as well.
Well, thank you, Congressman. You are the real deal. You voted against the bank bailouts and President Bush's Medicare spending. So, you're a real budget cutter.